We begin with the latest hostilities between the U.S. and Iran. Iran is claiming it shot down a U.S. Reaper drone after the U.S. military launched what it called self-defense strikes on Iranian forces. And this comes amid a fragile ceasefire and insistence from the U.S. that a peace deal is still possible.
It's going to take a couple days to settle on even down to the disagreements over a word, sentence. So we'll have to work through that. If there's going to be a deal, we're going to have to work through that. But this is, it's either going to be a good deal or there isn't going to be one.
Meanwhile, Iran's Supreme Leader Moshtaba Khamenei released a statement on Iranian state television. He warned that America will no longer have a safe place in the region to establish military bases. Let's go live now to Washington and CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, good to see you today. Can you take us through why the U.S. is insisting this ceasefire is holding despite the latest hostilities with Iran?
Yeah, Mugo, laying mines and blowing up boats doesn't sound like much of a ceasefire. But first of all, nobody wants to see an escalation or an event that would cause that ceasefire to crumble. But the U.S. military has been saying that the enemy gets a vote. It's a saying they like to use. And the Iranians say they have every right to retaliate after these strikes. Now, according to a statement from Central Command, they say targets included missile launch sites and Iranian boats attempting to emplace mines. U.S. Central Command continues to defend our forces while using restraint, important word during the ongoing ceasefire. Again, very important to point out, as far as the U.S. military is concerned, and really that's all that matters, the ceasefire is in place. So officials that I've been speaking to over the weekend say that these strikes are preemptive, that it was in order to protect U.S. troops. There were 2 Iranian fast boats that were spotted laying mines, and when U.S. aircraft spotted them, an Iranian missile launcher was activated, and that too was hit. So I was told that this was a single event and not the resumption of hostilities. But it just underlines where we are right now. There may be or may not be some diplomatic progress going on, but the United States is ready to respond militarily if needed and on very short notice.
And in the meantime, what do we know about Iran's military capabilities at this point in the conflict? We've heard from the president say Iran really does not have a navy anymore. It can't really defend itself. But what do we know about that?
Well, first of all, the Iranians would have wasted no time rearming and repositioning their capabilities. And while the Pentagon and President Trump may have exaggerated the success of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes to destroy and dismantle Iran's vast arsenal, some estimates put Iran's military or missile capabilities at like 50 to 75% of what it was before the last round of fighting began. Missile launchers, maybe 50 to 60%. Obviously, it's impossible to know how many drones they still have left, assuming they've been able to restart those assembly lines. But certainly enough to be a headache for the United States. Israel and Israeli officials that I spoke to have sounded the alarm, and of course, other Gulf allies.
Yeah, and Charlie, I want to get your thoughts on this because Iran's supreme leader says the U.S. no longer has a safe place for its military bases in the region. What exactly does that suggest?
Well, Mugo, I have to rewind. I was in the Middle East when this conflict began back in February, and there was this onslaught of attacks on U.S. military facilities throughout the region. We talk about Kuwait, where U.S. service members were killed, Bahrain, which is the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet, the Naval Fifth Fleet, all within easy striking distance from Iran. And then you have the UAE and airstrips there. So there were multiple U.S. facilities, air bases, naval bases that were targeted and were targeted successfully. So yes, of course, the Iranians are going to be putting this messaging out that if those bases remain in place, they are legitimate targets and they will be attacked. But it's something that has to be taken seriously. Bahrain, for instance, we know that a number of personnel had to leave that base when they came under attack for their own safekeeping and well-being. And I think if and when this conflict is finally over, I think the U.S. military in that region has got to take a very good look at their U.S. military presence and the vulnerabilities there. Wow. And I would be interested to know whether that sort of forward posturing that we are here, because they're in the middle of an active dynamic conflict, how much of that is going to remain in place once this all wraps up in any description.
Yeah, we'll see. Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nikole.
Let's stay in Washington right now and go to CBS News correspondent Nikole Killion. Nikole, thanks for your time as well. So what is the administration saying about peace talks amid this latest exchange of fire with Iran?
Well, for now, the administration continues to press ahead. You heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that we're going to continue to work through this. Also, to Charlie's point with respect to CENTCOM, acknowledging they kind of see this kind of as a one-time event and not sustained hostilities. So we know right now that there is a draft that is under consideration both by the United States and Iran. Under that draft agreement, for instance, Iran would reopen the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for the U.S. potentially lifting its blockade on Iranian ports. There's also the hope that there can be further discussions over Iran's nuclear program, specifically trying to find a mechanism to dispose of Iran's enriched uranium in exchange potentially for sanctions relief. And we actually heard the president on Truth Social put some additional terms and conditions on this and show some flexibility in terms of saying that this enriched uranium either could be turned over to the United States to be destroyed, it could be destroyed on site in Iran, or at an acceptable location outside of the country. So the president also encouraging Gulf nations in the region to sign on to the Abraham Accords to normalize relations with Israel. So those are some additional conditions, not necessarily part of this draft, but some other terms that the president is laying out. So we will see kind of how things progress. But, the president has said that he is not in a rush necessarily to reach a deal, that he wants to make sure that his administration gets this right.
Okay. And Nikole, we understand the president has called a cabinet meeting tomorrow at Camp David. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it appears this cabinet meeting will be on a range of topics. Although we are told it will touch on foreign policy, we also expect, according to a White House official, that this will also deal with some of the administration's domestic policies, what it sees as successes in terms of the economy and small business, and the administration's attempts to combat fraud, their efforts to combat fraud, I should say. So that is the crux of this meeting. We do expect the D&I director, Tulsi Gabbard, who will be leaving at the end of the month, to take part in this meeting along with other cabinet officials. And as of now, the meeting is currently scheduled to take place at Camp David. We're not exactly sure why that particular location, but it will be weather dependent, as there are some gloomy skies here in Washington. So if he can't make it there, it could potentially be held at another location.
Okay. And Nikole, the president is undergoing his third physical of his second term today. When can we expect the details from that?
Yeah, that's right. Well, a White House official says that we'll probably get a readout from the president's medical visit at some point within the next day or so. Keep in mind that this is the president's third visit to Walter Reed thus far of his second term, and he is also going to be there not only to undergo medical evaluations, but also to undergo dental treatments as well. We already know he's gotten 2 dental treatments within the past year thus far. But while he is there, and in terms of being evaluated, the president is also expected to meet with members of the military there, service members who are also there being treated. So we expect to learn more once this visit wraps up. Mugo.
Okay, Nikole Killion in Washington. Thank you.